I'm David Kiley, editor-in-chief of AOL Autos. You know, a little over 70 years ago, the United States was facing war. Pearl Harbor hadn't happened yet, but the country knew that it was going to war against Germany and Adolf Hitler. The U.S. military had a problem, though. It did not have a military vehicle that was adequate for what was to come in World War II. So it put out a bid to over 100 companies to build such a vehicle. This 2011 Jeep Wrangler is the mechanical descendant of that original Jeep, and it's going to be our ride on a very special journey back into history.
I had a lifetime to hear about my father's war, but until recently I had little knowledge of or understanding about my Uncle Eddie, my father's brother, who was killed in December 1944 in Western Germany. And I want to see the place where he died and where he was laid to rest.
We start here in the heart of Berlin at the Brandenburg Gate. We're going to travel to Western Germany to a place called the Hürtgen Forest, the site of one of the bloodiest battles of the war. And it's a place where my uncle Eddie Kiley gave his last measure. We'll conclude our journey in a small military cemetery in Belgium, where he's laid to rest with thousands of his colleagues.
This is the place where the Battle of the Hürtgen Forest was fought between September 1944 until February of 45, about 20 kilometers inside the German border. My uncle was a member of the 15th Armored Infantry Battalion, part of General Patton's army that raced across France, Belgium, and finally into Germany in a little over 2 months.
A pine forest is a particularly bad place to have a battle. All the Germans had to do was zero in on your position, and if they didn't actually drop a mortar or an artillery shell that hit the ground, if they shot it into the trees and shattered a tree, they could kill you with trees falling on you, or the tree itself, because it's pine, exploding into shards and jagged pieces of wood that would rain down on these guys.
His unit was fed into the worst of the Hürtgen fighting near the village of Kleinau on November 29th. They started out with 58 tanks and 750 men. By December 9th, 2 days before he was killed, his task force had only 8 tanks and just 70 men answered the roll call.
I'm standing very close to where my uncle was killed. It's humbling to be here, to know that an uncle I never knew walked very close to where I'm walking now and was killed here. I'm really glad I came. I've been talking to a gentleman who's a veteran of the Hürtgen campaign who fought on the German side.
Americans and Germans have largely reconciled. Klaus Schultz was a private in the German army fighting against my uncle.
They were asking yourself, well, how did this all come about? Was it just this one man, Hitler, and his men, you know, who somehow captured the population, or were there more to it? There was, you know, I should say a swing, you know, away from seeing these people as enemies, and one became friendly, and one also with a few of them became very close friends.
After my uncle was killed, he was interred in a grave that just had a wooden cross on it, and then he was later moved from that grave to the cemetery where we're going, which is Henri Chapelle. I don't mind admitting that I'm a little nervous about going to Henri Chapelle cemetery to see my uncle's grave. I almost feel like I'm going to see a relative that I've never met before.
All war cemeteries are hallowed places, but the ones abroad are something special. Next of kin are given one-on-one attention. The letters of his grave are filled in with wet sand taken from Omaha Beach in Normandy. Flags are placed and then given to me to take home.
I've come to the grave of my Uncle Eddie for the first time, connected with important family history. Got to know an uncle I never knew who gave his life for American freedom. I hope that the story that I've shared with you inspires you to connect with your own family history. For AOL and the Huffington Post, I'm David Kiley.